They say a mother's love is unconditional. They're wrong. Everything has a breaking point. Even a mother's heart. Especially a mother's heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I always thought I'd grow old gracefully. That's what my mother did. Silver hair styled weekly at the salon, tailored pantsuits, tasteful jewelry. She aged like fine wine, my mother, all quiet dignity and knowing smiles. When she died at 82, the funeral home director said she was the most elegant woman he'd ever prepared for burial. At 58, I was anything but elegant. My hair was a mess of gray and faded brown that I couldn't be bothered to color anymore. My wardrobe consisted of loose cotton dresses and sensible shoes. After John's death 3 years ago, I'd let myself become invisible. It was easier that way. No expectations, no disappointments. I lived alone in the sprawling colonial we'd bought when the children were small. Too big for one person, but filled with memories I couldn't bear to leave behind. The garden, once John's pride and joy, had gone wild with neglect. The kitchen, where I'd prepared thousands of family meals, now saw me eating cereal straight from the box at odd hours. The guest rooms gathered dust. The only visitors I had these days were memories, and they weren't particularly good company. My son Spencer lived in Seattle with his wife and their twin boys. He called dutifully every Sunday, asked the same questions, made the same promises to visit soon. We both knew he wouldn't. My daughter, Becca, lived just 20 minutes away in a trendy loft downtown. Despite the proximity, I saw her maybe once a month, usually when she needed something. Money for rent, a shoulder to cry on after another failed relationship, or someone to watch her dog when she took spontaneous weekend trips with friends. I'd always been closer to Becca. She was my firstborn, my difficult one, the child who'd tested every ounce of my patience and love. While Spencer was self-sufficient from the moment he could walk, Becca needed me constantly, for reassurance, for guidance, for money, for everything. Even now, at 35, she leaned on me like she was still a teenager. "Mom, I just need to get through this month," she'd say, eyes wide and pleading. "The gallery hasn't paid me yet, and my landlord's being such a dick about the rent." And I'd write the check, every time. John had warned me about enabling her. "She'll never stand on her own 2 feet if you're always there to catch her," he'd say in that reasonable tone that used to drive me crazy. But I couldn't help it. She was my baby, my beautiful, talented, troubled baby. And she needed me. Or so I thought. The video came on a Tuesday. An ordinary Tuesday in May when the azaleas were blooming and the air smelled like possibility. I was sitting on the porch, drinking lukewarm coffee and scrolling through Facebook, my one concession to modern technology, when the message from Lila popped up. Lila had been my best friend since our children were in preschool together. We'd survived divorces, hers, deaths, my husband, empty nests, and menopausal mood swings together. She was the one person I trusted completely, the one person who never asked me for anything except honesty. "Elena, I need to show you something. I'm sorry. Call me when you see this." Attached was a video, just under 2 minutes long. I pressed play, expecting... I don't know what I was expecting. Not this, never this. The video quality was poor, clearly taken on someone's phone in low light. But there was no mistaking my daughter. Becca stood in what looked like a crowded kitchen, wine glass in hand, her head thrown back in laughter. She was surrounded by people I vaguely recognized. Friends of hers, other artists from the gallery where she occasionally sold her mediocre paintings. "So, what did you tell her?" someone off camera asked. Becca rolled her eyes dramatically. "What I always tell her. That I'm broke, that the gallery is screwing me over, that my landlord's threatening to evict me." She took a swig of wine. "Meanwhile, I'm sitting on last month's loan she gave me. $2,000, no questions asked." More laughter. "Your mother is such a pushover," someone said. Becca nodded, her face contorting into something ugly and unfamiliar. "I can't stand her. She makes me sick. I wish she'd just disappear." The group erupted in laughter. Someone raised a glass. "To rich, gullible mothers everywhere." "She's not even that rich," Becca continued, warming to her audience. Just stupid with her money. Dad left her comfortable, but the way she throws cash at me, you'd think she was loaded. More laughter, more wine, more mockery. And she's so pathetic now. Just sitting in that big house all day waiting for me to call. It's like, get a life, you know? Stop living through me. I went cold. My stomach turned, acid rising in my throat. The phone felt suddenly heavy in my hand, the screen too bright. My daughter, my Becca, the child I'd nursed through countless illnesses, consoled through heartbreaks, supported through job losses and creative crises. The person I loved most in this world. Before I could process what I'd seen, another message from Lila arrived. There's more. But are you sure you want to hear it? I sat there, frozen, as the sun continued to shine and the azaleas continued to bloom, as the world continued to turn, oblivious to the fact that mine had just shattered. Was I sure? No, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Not my relationship with my daughter, not my judgment, not my past decisions, not my worth, but I needed to know, all of it. The complete truth, no matter how much it hurt. With shaking fingers, I typed, "Send it." Lila called instead. Her voice was gentle, apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Elena. I was at Jen's birthday party last night. You know, my niece who works at that gallery downtown? Becca was there. I don't think she knew I was Jen's aunt. Or maybe she just didn't care. But I heard things. Things you need to know." I listened as Lila detailed conversations she'd overheard. How Becca had bragged about manipulating me. How she'd mocked my grief over John, calling it performative and convenient. How she'd admitted to lying about gallery sales falling through, about emergencies with her dog, about needing money for medical bills. She said, Lila hesitated. She said you were her retirement plan. That as long as she played the struggling artist who just needs one more chance, one more loan, you'd keep bankrolling her. That you're so desperate for her approval, you'll never cut her off. The words landed like blows, each one stealing my breath. And Elena, she's not broke. She showed everyone a new watch she bought, a Cartier. Said it cost $8,000. Said it was courtesy of Mommy Dearest. $8,000. The same amount I'd given her 3 months ago when she'd tearfully explained that she needed emergency dental surgery not covered by her insurance. "I thought you needed to know," Lila finished softly. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but you're my friend, my best friend, and she's using you." After we hung up, I sat on the porch for a long time. The coffee grew cold. The shadows lengthened across the lawn. Inside the house, the phone rang. Probably Becca, calling to ask for something else, to take something else, to lie about something else. I didn't answer. Instead, I went inside and poured myself a generous glass of the scotch John used to drink on special occasions. I took it to his study, a room I rarely entered since his death, and sat in his leather chair. Surrounded by his books, his awards, his presents, I allowed myself to really see my daughter for the first time. Not as the baby I'd rocked to sleep, not as the child who'd needed extra help with math, not as the teenager who'd slammed doors and broken curfew, not as the young woman who'd cried on my shoulder after each heartbreak. I saw her as she truly was, a parasite, a user, a grown woman who took pleasure in deceiving the mother who'd given her everything. And in that moment, something inside me, something soft and forgiving and maternal, hardened into stone. In that moment, Elena White died, and someone new took her place. Someone who wouldn't forgive. Someone who wouldn't forget. Someone who would make absolutely certain that Becca understood, finally and completely, that actions have consequences. I lifted John's scotch in a silent toast. "You were right, darling," I whispered to the empty room. "I've been enabling her, but that ends today." I took a slow sip, letting the alcohol burn away the last of my sentimentality, my weakness. Tomorrow I would begin dismantling my daughter's comfortable life of lies, and I would do it with the same methodical care with which I'd once built it. I've always been a planner. When I taught high school English for 26 years, my colleagues marveled at my color-coded lesson plans and meticulously organized classroom. John used to tease me about my vacation binders, complete with daily itineraries, restaurant reservations, and backup activities in case of rain. Even our children knew that behind my warm smiles and homemade cookies lurked a mind that cataloged every detail, anticipated every problem, and prepared for every contingency. So when I decided to dismantle my daughter's life, I approached it like any other project, methodically, patiently, and with great attention to detail. First, I needed information, all of it. I spent the next day in John's study, going through our financial records. Every check I'd written to Becca over the past 5 years, every cash withdrawal coinciding with her emergencies, every Venmo transaction labeled "Love you, Mom," as if gratitude could be conveyed in an emoji. The total made me physically ill, $127,142, not including the car I'd bought her when she claimed hers was on its last legs, not including the 6 months of rent I'd paid when she'd been between gigs, not including the student loans I was still paying off a decade after her graduation with a degree in fine arts she barely used. I created a spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, reasons given. Looking at it objectively, the pattern was humiliatingly clear. The requests always came after periods of warmth, of long phone calls and Sunday dinners, where she'd ask about my life with what I now recognized as feigned interest. The amounts had increased over time, as had the frequency. The emergencies had grown more elaborate, more heart-tugging, and I'd fallen for it every single time. Next, I needed to understand the extent of her deception. That required something I'd never done before: invading her privacy. I knew her email password. She'd given it to me years ago when she needed help applying for jobs during a particularly difficult financial time. I logged in, expecting to find evidence confirming what Lila had told me. What I found was worse. Emails to friends describing in mocking detail how she'd manipulated me into paying for a vacation to Bali, a mental health retreat that had actually been a 2-week drinking binge with her artist friends. A long thread with someone named Marcus, discussing how she could squeeze the old lady for another few grand because she wanted to put a down payment on a rental property, an investment property, using my money, shopping receipts for designer clothes, expensive jewelry, exclusive restaurants, all while telling me she could barely afford groceries. But what truly froze the blood in my veins was an email to my son, Spencer. "Mom's getting worse. All she does is sit in that house and wait for me to call. It's pathetic. I know we talked about assisted living, but I don't think she'll go willingly. She's not technically incompetent yet, just sad and lonely. But hey, if she keeps throwing money at me, I'm not complaining. Maybe you could visit more often and we could tag team her. You play the concerned son, I'll play the devoted daughter, and we can finally sell that mausoleum she lives in. The real estate alone would set us both up for years." Spencer's reply was short. "I can't get away right now. The boys have school and Sarah would kill me. But keep me posted, maybe at Christmas." He hadn't defended me, hadn't expressed outrage at his sister's suggestion, had simply been too busy to participate in their scheme. Both of my children, both of them seeing me as nothing more than a resource to be drained, a problem to be managed, an obstacle between them and their inheritance. I printed the emails, all of them. Then I deleted the browser history and shut down the computer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the house, the mausoleum my children were so eager to sell out from under me, touching familiar objects as if to anchor myself to reality. The grandfather clock John had restored, the gallery wall of family photos chronicling vacations, graduations, holidays, the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where I'd helped with homework, where I'd listened to teenage dramas and adult problems. Had it all been a lie? Every moment? Every relationship? By morning, I had my answer. Not every moment. Not when they were small and needed me. Not when they were truly vulnerable. But at some point, a point I couldn't precisely identify, my children had stopped seeing me as a person. I'd become a resource, a safety net, an ATM with a pulse. The realization brought not more pain, but a strange clarity. A calmness settled over me as I showered, dressed, and made myself a proper breakfast for the first time in months. I had allowed this to happen. I had trained my daughter to see me as exploitable, I had raised my son to view me as disposable. Well, I could unraise them just as thoroughly. My phone buzzed with a text from Becca. "Hey, Mom, can I come over tonight? Need to talk about something important. Love you." I stared at the message, at the casual "love you" tacked on like an afterthought, and felt nothing. No warmth, no longing, no maternal instinct to forgive and forget. "Of course, sweetheart," I typed back. "I'll make your favorite lasagna. 7 o'clock? Perfect. You're the best." I spent the day preparing, not just the lasagna, which I made with mechanical precision, but myself. I styled my hair for the first time in months, applied makeup, wore one of my nicer dresses, a deep blue wrap dress that John had always loved, subtle jewelry, perfume. I wanted to look strong, formidable, nothing like the pathetic shut-in my daughter had described to her friends. At 6:57, her car pulled into the driveway. Right on time, a rarity for Becca, who operated on her own perpetually late schedule. She must need something significant. I watched through the window as she checked her reflection in the car mirror, practiced a worried expression, then grabbed a small gift bag from the passenger seat. A prop, I now understood. A visual reminder of what a thoughtful daughter she was, bringing her lonely mother a trinket along with her latest financial request. The doorbell rang. Deep breath, shoulders back, game face on. "Becca, sweetheart." I pulled her into a hug, noting the stiffness in her body, the way she patted my back perfunctorily. Had she always been this obvious, or was I just finally paying attention? "Mom, you look great." She seemed momentarily taken aback by my appearance. "Really? Put together?" "Oh, I've been making some changes lately." I smiled, ushering her into the house. "Come in, dinner's almost ready." She handed me the gift bag. "Just a little something I saw and thought of you." Inside was a coffee mug that read, "World's Best Mom." Mass-produced. Probably picked up at the gas station on the way over. I remembered a similar mug she'd given me for Mother's Day when she was 9. That one had been treasured, displayed prominently, used daily until it finally cracked. "It's perfect," I said, setting it aside without examining it further. "Come, tell me what's going on while we eat." Over dinner, I watched her carefully. The way she picked at her food while launching into an elaborate story about an art dealer interested in her work, an opportunity that could be her big break, but required a significant investment up front for materials and studio space. "So, I was thinking," she said, eyes wide and earnest. "Maybe I could borrow against my inheritance? I know it's unconventional, but this could really change everything for me, Mom." There it was. Not just another request for money, but a step toward what she'd discussed with Spencer, positioning me as declining, as needing management, as someone whose assets should be redistributed before death made it official. I took a sip of wine, considering my response. This was the moment. The first move in a game she didn't yet know we were playing. "Actually," I said carefully, "I've been thinking about my will recently." Her expression flickered, a momentary calculation poorly disguised as concern. "Oh? Why's that? You're not sick, are you?" "Not at all. In fact, I'm feeling better than I have in years." I smiled. "But John's been gone 3 years now, and I think it's time I got my affairs in order. Started thinking about the future." She nodded eagerly. Too eagerly. "I'd be happy to help you with that," she offered, reaching for my hand across the table. "Whatever you need." I squeezed her fingers gently, this stranger who wore my daughter's face. "That's very kind of you," I said. "In fact, there is something you could help me with." Her smile widened, so confident, so certain of her control over the situation. "Anything, Mom. I need you to pack up the rest of your childhood belongings from the attic. I'm thinking of converting it into a proper space, maybe for yoga or painting." Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh, sure, I can do that. But about the investment opportunity, let's talk about that after dessert," I said, standing to clear the plates. "I made your favorite chocolate mousse." As I stood in the kitchen, listening to her tap away at her phone in the dining room, no doubt messaging friends about her imminent financial windfall, I felt nothing but cold resolve. Dessert would indeed change everything, but not in the way my daughter expected. It was time for her first lesson in consequences. I served the chocolate mousse in crystal dessert cups, John's mother's wedding china that I saved for special occasions. Becca's eyes lit up when I placed it before her, a Pavlovian response to the treat I'd made for her after school performances, tough exams, teenage heartbreaks. "Oh my God, you made the mousse!" She dug in immediately, closing her eyes in exaggerated pleasure. "I've missed this so much." I watched her eat, remembering the little girl who would lick the spoon clean, who would look up at me with chocolate-smeared lips and pure adoration. That child was gone. Perhaps she'd never really existed except in my desperate maternal imagination. "So, about this investment opportunity," I said, setting my own dessert aside untouched. "Tell me exactly what you need." Becca launched into her pitch, growing more animated with each detail. A prestigious gallery in Chelsea was interested in her work. The owner wanted a series of large-scale paintings, at least 15 pieces, for a featured exhibition. The materials alone would cost thousands, not to mention the studio rental she'd need since her loft was too small for canvases that size. "It's $20,000, she said finally, reaching for my hand. "I know it's a lot, Mom, but this could change everything. This could be what I've been working toward my whole career." The performance was flawless. The tremor in her voice, the way she squeezed my fingers, eyes shining with what looked remarkably like genuine emotion. If I hadn't seen the video, read the emails, tabulated the spreadsheet of her deceptions, I might have believed her, might have opened my checkbook right then. $20,000, I repeated softly. She nodded eagerly. "I'd pay you back, of course, once the exhibition sells out." "And when is this exhibition scheduled?" "That's the thing. It's a bit of a tight timeline. 3 months from now, August 15th. I nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the logistics rather than cataloging another lie. "And what's the name of the gallery? The owner?" A flicker of hesitation. "Horizon Gallery. The owner is Marcus de Soto." Marcus. The same name from the emails discussing how to squeeze the old lady for another few grand. "I'd like to see the contract," I said. Becca blinked. "The contract?" "Yes, for the exhibition. I assume you have something in writing for such an important opportunity." "Oh, we haven't formalized everything yet. Marcus likes to work on a handshake until the pieces are ready for review." I smiled. "That seems unusual for a prestigious Chelsea gallery, but I'm not an artist, so what do I know?" I stood gathering our dessert dishes. "You know what? I think I'd like to meet Marcus, see the gallery space. If I'm going to invest in your work, I should understand the opportunity fully." Panic flashed across her face, quickly masked with a strained smile. "He's actually out of town right now. Berlin, I think. Art fair. When does he return?" "I'm not sure." "Well, no rush on the money then," I said lightly, carrying the dishes to the kitchen. "We can discuss it when he's back and the three of us can meet." I could practically hear the gears turning in her head as she followed me, leaning against the kitchen counter with forced casualness. "The thing is, Mom, I need to secure the studio space now. Good studios are hard to find, especially short-term rentals with the ceiling height I need." I turned to face her, arms crossed. "Becca, can I ask you something?" "Of course." Her voice was wary. "Do you think I'm stupid?" The question hung in the air between us. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "What?" "No, of course not. Why would you ask that?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to the study and returned with a folder. Inside was the spreadsheet I'd created, a printout of her emails, and stills from the video Lila had sent me. I placed it on the kitchen island between us but kept my hand firmly on top. "Because either you think I'm remarkably stupid or you're remarkably arrogant. I'm not sure which is worse." The color drained from her face. "Mom, what is this?" "Evidence," I said simply, tapping the folder. "Of who you really are. Of what you really think of me." She tried to reach for the folder, but I pulled it back. "I don't understand." "Stop lying," I said, my voice still calm but edged with steel. "It's exhausting for both of us. There is no gallery exhibition. There is no Marcus de Soto from Horizon Gallery. There might be a Marcus, your partner in defrauding me, but he's not a gallery owner." She stared at me, lips parted, mind clearly racing for another lie, another manipulation. How much was it going to be this time? I asked. The rental property you and Marcus were discussing? The one you were going to use my $20,000 as a down payment for? Whatever color remained in her face vanished. You read my emails? I did. That's an invasion of my privacy. The absurdity of her indignation almost made me laugh. Your privacy? What about my trust, my finances, my dignity? I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very good at explanations, at stories, at manipulations. I opened the folder and slid the spreadsheet toward her. $127,842. That's how much I've given you in the past 5 years alone. Not counting your car, not counting your rent, not counting your student loans. She stared at the numbers, speechless. And that's what you've taken in cash or direct payments. It doesn't account for the meals, the gifts, the emotional labor of worrying about you, believing you were struggling when you were actually... I slid forward a printout of her Instagram page showing her at expensive restaurants, on vacations, wearing designer clothes, living quite comfortably on my dime while mocking me behind my back. Mom, those photos, it's not what it looks like. Social media isn't real life. No, I agreed. It isn't. Neither is the struggling artist routine you've been performing for years. Neither is your concern for me. Neither is your love. Her eyes filled with tears. I noted dispassionately how they made her mascara smudge just slightly, enough to look vulnerable, but not enough to be unattractive. Even now she was calculating her effect. That's not true, she whispered. I do love you. Here's what's going to happen, I said, ignoring her performance. I'm cutting you off, completely. No more money, no more bailouts, no more loans we both know you'll never repay. You can't be serious. The tears disappeared as quickly as they'd come, replaced by indignation. I've never been more serious in my life. Because of some stupid joke at a party? Because I vented to friends? Everyone complains about their parents. I slid forward the last item in my folder. The email to Spencer about putting me in assisted living and selling my home. Her mouth snapped shut. Not just a joke. A plan. A conspiracy between my children to defraud me, to declare me incompetent, to take what's mine before I'm even dead. My voice remained steady, even as I named the betrayal aloud for the first time. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. It was just talk. It stops now. I closed the folder with finality. I've spoken with my attorney. I've changed my will. I've closed all the accounts you had access to. As of today, you are entirely on your own financially. You changed your will? Her voice was small, disbelieving. Both you and your brother have been removed as beneficiaries. I've set up a trust that will distribute my assets to several educational charities upon my death. The shock on her face would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. You can't do that. We're your children. Biology isn't enough, Rebecca. Not anymore. So that's it? You're just disowning us? Over some stupid emails and party talk? I considered her question carefully. Was I disowning them? Did I no longer consider them my children? I'm holding you accountable, I said finally. For the first time in your adult life. This is insane. You're overreacting. I'll talk to Spencer. Spencer already knows. I called him this morning. Her eyes widened. What did he say? He was very concerned about my mental state. Suggested grief might be clouding my judgment. Offered to fly out and help me think clearly about these decisions. I smiled thinly. Apparently, you two haven't coordinated your stories very well. Mom, please. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. We can work this out. I'll pay you back. I'll get therapy. Whatever you want. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to leave my house and not come back until you're ready to have an honest relationship with me. Not based on what I can give you, but on who we are to each other. If that's even possible anymore. You don't mean that. I do. I walked to the front door and opened it. A clear dismissal. Take some time to think about who you want to be, Rebecca. The daughter who manipulates and mocks her mother, or someone with integrity and decency. The choice is yours. She stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps she was. perhaps the mother she knew. The pushover, the ATM, the pathetic shut-in waiting by the phone, had never really existed either. "You'll regret this," she said finally, gathering her purse with shaking hands. "You need me more than I need you." I watched her storm past me, out into the warm spring evening. Watched her fumble with her car keys, her hands trembling with rage or shock, or perhaps genuine grief. Just before she got into her car, she turned back. Is this really what Dad would have wanted? You, alone in that house, turning against your own children? The question was meant to wound, to find the soft underbelly of my grief and pierce it. But I was beyond such manipulations now. "Your father," I said clearly, "would be ashamed of who you've become." Then I closed the door on my daughter's stunned face and turned the deadbolt with a satisfying click. The fallout was swift and predictable. Within an hour of Becca's departure, my phone began to light up with calls and messages. From her, from Spencer, from mutual friends who'd suddenly developed concerns about my mental health. I let them all go to voicemail. Their panic wasn't my problem anymore. Instead, I poured myself another glass of wine and sat in John's study, feeling more at peace than I had in years. The charade was over. The constant drain on my emotions, my finances, my self-respect, all of it stopped with a single conversation. Spencer called 17 times that night. I finally answered on the 18th call, more out of curiosity than obligation. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Becca's hysterical. Says you've lost your mind." "Hello to you too, Spencer." I kept my tone pleasant, neutral. "How are the boys?" "Don't change the subject." "Did you really change your will? Cut us both out completely?" "No." "Are you okay?" "No." "What happened?" "Just straight to the money." My son, the pragmatist, always focused on the bottom line. "I did." I took a sip of wine. "Would you like to know why?" "Becca said something about emails? About a video?" "Mom, if this is about some stupid joke she made, it's about a pattern, Spencer. A pattern of deception, manipulation, and disrespect that's gone on far too long." I paused, wondering how much he truly knew. "Tell me, when were you planning to suggest assisted living? Before or after Christmas?" Silence on the line. Then, "She showed you those emails?" "No, I found them myself." Another long silence. I could almost see him recalculating, reassessing the situation. Spencer had always been the strategic one, the one who thought 3 moves ahead. "Look," he finally said, his voice softening into what I recognized as his professional tone, the one he used with difficult clients. "I think we all need to take a step back here. Clearly there have been some misunderstandings." "No misunderstandings, Spencer. Just clarity. For the first time in years. Mom, I'm worried about you. We both are. This isn't like you." That's exactly the problem. I felt a surge of something like pride. The old me would have let this go, made excuses for you both, blamed myself for your behavior. But I'm done being that person. You're still grieving, Dad. It's been 3 years, but grief doesn't follow a timeline. Maybe you should talk to someone. "I'm not grieving anymore," I interrupted. "I'm awake." He made a frustrated sound. "I'm flying out there. We need to talk face to face." "That's not necessary." "It is. I'm coming tomorrow. We'll sort this out." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, momentarily thrown by his authoritative tone, so like his father's, but without John's underlying kindness. Then I smiled to myself. Let him come. Let him see firsthand that the mother he'd taken for granted was gone. The next morning, I called my attorney, Richard Gaines. He'd been John's friend for decades, had handled our affairs since we'd written our first will after Becca was born. I explained the situation, asking him to expedite the changes to my estate planning. "Are you sure about this, Elena?" His voice was careful, professional. "Cutting your children out entirely is a significant step." "I'm not cutting them out entirely," I clarified. "I'm establishing a trust with specific conditions. They can earn back their inheritance, but it won't be automatic. And it certainly won't be available to them while I'm alive." Richard was silent for a moment. Then, "John worried about this, you know. About Becca especially. He thought you were too generous with her. A pang of something. Regret, perhaps, shot through me. He was right, as usual. I'll have the papers ready for you to sign tomorrow. And Elena, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Hard, but right. Next, I called my financial advisor and instructed him to move my assets into accounts that neither of my children could access, even in an emergency. No powers of attorney, no joint accounts, no safety nets. Then I called a locksmith to change the locks on the house. By afternoon, word had spread through our social circle. Lila called, concerned but supportive. "Becca's been calling everyone," she reported, "saying you've had some kind of breakdown, that you're paranoid and delusional." "Let her," I said, surprised by my own indifference. "People who know me will make their own judgments." "Are you really okay, though?" Lila's voice softened. "This can't be easy." I considered the question seriously. Was I okay? I'd discovered my children were plotting against me, had been using me for years, had mocked and disrespected me behind my back. By any reasonable standard, I should be devastated. But I wasn't. I felt liberated. "I'm better than I've been in years," I told her honestly. "It's like I've been carrying this weight, this responsibility for their happiness, their success, their financial stability. And now I've set it down. I can breathe again. And when Spencer arrives tomorrow, then he'll meet the new me. The one who can't be manipulated or guilted or shamed into handing over money or making excuses for bad behavior. He won't like that," Lila warned. "No," I agreed. "He won't." Spencer arrived the next morning, striding up my newly locked front door with the confidence of someone who expects the world, and his mother, to bend to his will. When his key didn't work, he rang the doorbell repeatedly, each press longer and more insistent than the last. I took my time answering, watching through the peephole as his expression shifted from impatience to confusion to annoyance. When I finally opened the door, he pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. "You changed the locks?" he demanded, dropping his overnight bag in the foyer. "Hello, Spencer. It's nice to see you too. How was your flight?" He ignored my pointed civility. "What's going on with you? First you cut us out of your will, now you're changing locks? Do you have any idea how worried we've been?" I closed the front door and led him into the living room, noting how he scanned the space as if looking for signs of deterioration or neglect. He seemed almost disappointed to find everything in perfect order. "I'm perfectly fine," I said, sitting in John's favorite armchair. "Better than fine, actually." "Then why are you doing this? Why are you punishing us?" "It's not punishment, Spencer. It's consequences." I gestured for him to sit. "And it's long overdue." He remained standing, hovering over me in what I recognized as a power play. "You read a few emails out of context, and now you're throwing away your relationship with your children? That's not rational, Mom." "The emails were perfectly in context," I said mildly, "as was the video of your sister mocking me to her friends. As is your presence here now, concerned not about my well-being, but about your inheritance. That's not fair." "No? Then tell me, Spencer, what exactly did Becca say to make you fly across the country on a moment's notice? Was it concern that I might be unwell, or concern that I'd cut off your access to my money?" A muscle in his jaw twitched, a tell he'd had since childhood when caught in a lie. "Both. Obviously both." "Let's test that theory," I said, rising to face him directly. "If I were to tell you right now that I've reconsidered, that your inheritance is secure, but I still want distance from both of you, would you get back on a plane today and respect my wishes for space?" His hesitation was all the answer I needed. "That's what I thought," I said softly. "You're twisting everything," he protested, "making us sound like vultures circling your money." "If the scavenger metaphor fits," I shrugged. "This isn't you talking. This is, I don't know, depression or paranoia or something." "No, Spencer. This is clarity. This is me finally seeing what your father tried to warn me about for years." At the mention of John, Spencer's expression hardened. "Don't bring Dad into this." "Why not?" He saw what I couldn't or wouldn't see, that I was raising entitled, manipulative children who viewed me as a resource rather than a person. "That's bullshit," he snapped, his professional veneer cracking. "We've always been there for you. Always. When? I challenged. When have you been there for me, Spencer? When John died, you flew in for the funeral and left 2 days later. When I had pneumonia last winter, you sent flowers instead of coming to help. When I needed emotional support, guidance, companionship, where were you? I have a life, Mom. A wife, children, a demanding career. I can't just drop everything every time you feel lonely. No, you can't. And I would never expect you to. What I expected, what I deserved, was basic respect. Honesty, love that didn't come with invoices attached. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration radiating from every pore. So that's it? You're just done with us? 37 years of being our mother, and you can walk away that easily. The question hit something raw within me. Could I walk away from my children? Could I sever the bonds I'd spent a lifetime nurturing? But then I remembered the video, the emails, the calculated deceptions, the coldness behind their concern. I'm not walking away from being your mother, I said finally. I'm walking away from being your victim. Spencer stared at me, his expression a mixture of shock and something else, something that looked almost like grudging respect. Now, I continued, would you like to stay for dinner, or should I call you a cab back to the airport? 6 months passed. Summer bloomed and faded into fall. The maple in the front yard turned a brilliant scarlet before surrendering its leaves to the November wind. The house settled around me, no longer feeling too big or too empty, but just right, a space that was wholly mine. I'd expected loneliness after cutting ties with my children, expected to wake in the night, aching with regret, reaching for the phone to call them and make amends, but that never happened. Instead, I experienced something unexpected. Freedom. Freedom from anxiety about Becca's latest crisis. Freedom from Spencer's thinly veiled judgment. Freedom from the constant drain of giving, emotionally, financially, psychologically, without receiving anything in return. I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. I joined a book club at the local library, started volunteering at an adult literacy program 3 days a week, reconnected with colleagues from my teaching days, even went on a few dates, though none progressed beyond coffee or dinner. I wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe I never would be. John had been my one great love. Anything else would be a pale shadow. The children made several attempts at reconciliation, or what passed for reconciliation in their minds. Becca sent tearful voicemails. Spencer sent pragmatic emails outlining plans to move forward as a family. Neither ever contained a genuine apology or acknowledgement of their behavior. I let their messages pile up, unanswered. Not out of spite, but because I had nothing to say. The ball was in their court. They knew what they'd done. They knew what I wanted. Honesty, respect, a relationship based on genuine affection rather than financial dependence. Until they were ready to offer that, we had nothing to discuss. My attorney kept me informed of their more desperate moves. Becca consulted a lawyer about contesting the changes to my will. On what grounds, I couldn't imagine. Spencer made inquiries about power of attorney, citing concerns about my mother's mental stability. Both efforts went nowhere. I was demonstrably competent, my affairs in perfect order. What surprised me most was how quickly they moved on once they realized the money was truly gone. Becca found a wealthy boyfriend within months. Spencer redoubled his focus on his career, securing a promotion that he announced via a family-wide email I was copied on, as if nothing had changed. Life settled into a new pattern, not the one I'd envisioned for my later years, surrounded by children and grandchildren, the matriarch of a loving family, but one that had its own satisfactions. I was answerable only to myself. My time was my own. My home was peaceful. And then, exactly 6 months after I'd changed the locks, Lila called. "Becca's in trouble," she said without preamble. Real trouble this time. I felt a familiar twist of anxiety before reminding myself that Becca's problems were no longer mine to solve. What kind of trouble? She's been arrested. Fraud. That boyfriend of hers was running some kind of investment scam, and she was helping him recruit victims. I closed my eyes, unsurprised, yet still disappointed. I see. They've set bail at $50,000. She called me because you weren't answering. And what did you tell her? That I'd call you. Lila's voice was gentle but firm. Elena, I know what they did was awful. Unforgivable even. But she's still your daughter. Yes, I agreed. She is. So will you help her? I considered the question carefully. Not because I was tempted, I wasn't. But because I wanted to be absolutely clear about my answer, both to Lila and to myself. No, I said finally. I won't. Silence on the line. Then, are you sure? She could be looking at serious jail time. I'm sure. My voice was steady, my resolve absolute. Actions have consequences, Lila. It's a lesson she should have learned long ago. Perhaps she'll learn it now. That's hard, Elena. Yes, I agreed. It is. After we hung up, I sat in the garden John had loved, watching twilight descend over the autumn landscape. Was I a monster for not rushing to my daughter's rescue? Would a good mother have put aside her hurt and anger for the sake of her child, no matter how that child had behaved? Perhaps. But I was no longer interested in being a good mother by those standards. Those standards had created entitled, manipulative adults who saw me as nothing more than a resource to be drained. Those standards had nearly broken me. My phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me press the green button. Mom? Becca's voice was small, thick with tears. Mom, please don't hang up. I said nothing. Just listened to her ragged breathing. I'm in trouble, she continued. Real trouble this time. I made a mistake. A big one. Still, I remained silent. I need help, she whispered. I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I don't know who else to call. What exactly do you want from me, Rebecca? I asked finally, my voice neutral. Bail money. She let out a shuddering breath. And maybe a place to stay until the trial. Marcus kicked me out when the cops showed up. Said it was all my idea. Of course he did. Men like Marcus always found a woman to blame. I can't do that, I said. Mom, please. No, Rebecca. I can't bail you out of this. Not this time. Not ever again. I'll pay you back, she promised, desperation sharpening her voice. Every penny, I swear. This isn't about money. Then what is it about? Punishment? Teaching me a lesson? Fine, lesson learned. I was horrible to you. I used you. I lied. I'm sorry. Isn't that what you wanted to hear? Is it true? I asked. Silence. Then, yes, it's true. I am sorry. But you're only sorry now because you need something from me. Another long silence. That's not fair. It's perfectly fair. It's also perfectly accurate. I sighed, suddenly tired of the whole broken dynamic between us. Rebecca, I don't want you to suffer. I never did. But I also won't enable you anymore. You made choices, adult choices. Now you have to face adult consequences. So you're just leaving me here? In jail? Yes. She made a sound, half laugh, half sob. God, you really have changed. I have, I agreed. For the better. What am I supposed to do now? Whatever adults do when they've committed crimes and have no one to bail them out. Take responsibility. Cooperate with the authorities. Tell the truth. Get a public defender. Work within the system. I'm scared, she whispered. For a moment, just a moment, my resolve wavered. This was my child, my firstborn, the baby I'd nursed, the toddler I'd taught to walk, the little girl who'd brought me dandelion bouquets. But she wasn't that little girl anymore. She was a grown woman who'd made one bad choice after another, culminating in criminal activity that had hurt innocent people. I know you're scared, I said, my voice gentler but no less firm. But fear can be clarifying. It can show us who we really are and what really matters. And what matters to you, Mom? Clearly not me. The accusation stung, but I recognized it for what it was. Another manipulation, another attempt to make me question my boundaries. I've learned that I matter, I said simply. My peace of mind matters. My financial security matters. My self-respect matters. For too long, I sacrificed all of those things at the altar of motherhood. I won't do it anymore. So that's it? You're done being my mother? I considered the question carefully. I'll always be your mother, Rebecca. but I'm done being your victim, your ATM, and your enabler. I paused, choosing my next words with care. When you're ready for an honest relationship, one based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not what you can get from me, I'll be here. Until then, I wish you well, but from a distance. I hate you, she whispered, her voice breaking. I fucking hate you. No, I said with quiet certainty. You hate the consequences of your own actions. There's a difference. I ended the call and sat in the gathering darkness, feeling strangely at peace. I had done the hardest thing a parent can do. I had let my child face the natural consequences of her choices, without rushing in to save her. It wasn't what the parenting books recommended. It wasn't what society expected. But it was what she needed, even if she couldn't see it yet. Spencer called the next day, predictably furious. How could you abandon her like this? He demanded. She's your daughter. I'm aware of our relationship, I replied calmly. Are you calling to post her bail yourself? A telling pause. I can't right now. Things are tight with the kids' private school tuition and the new house. Ah, so you're calling to berate me for not doing what you're also not willing to do. Interesting. It's different for me. Is it? How? He had no good answer, just sputtered indignation. Spencer, I said gently, this is what adulthood looks like. Facing consequences, making hard choices, standing on your own. It's what I should have taught you both long ago. She could go to prison, he said, his voice dropping to a horrified whisper. Yes, she could. Actions have consequences, sometimes severe ones. And you're okay with that? Your own daughter in prison? No, I'm not okay with it. I'm heartbroken that she's made choices that led her here, but I'm at peace with my decision not to rescue her from those choices. He was silent for a long moment. Then, I don't understand you anymore. I know, I said. That's part of the problem. After we hung up, I went to John's study, now my study, and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a journal I'd started keeping after the confrontation with Becca. A record of my journey from doormat to woman of substance, from mother at all costs to person in my own right. I wrote about the calls, about my decision, about the strange mixture of grief and liberation I felt. I wrote honestly, without self-justification or apology. This journal wasn't for anyone else's eyes, just mine. A testament to the hardest and most necessary transformation of my life. When I finished writing, I closed the journal and placed it back in the drawer. Then I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea, not out of stress or anxiety, but simply because I wanted one. Outside, the last light was fading from the sky. Another day ending. Another day of living on my terms, without guilt or fear or constant emotional drainage. It wasn't the life I'd expected. It wasn't the relationship with my children I'd dreamed of. But it was honest. It was real. And after decades of living for others, of making excuses, of enabling bad behavior, it was mine. I raised my teacup in a silent toast to the empty room, to the quiet house, to the woman I'd finally become at 58. Not a perfect mother, not a self-sacrificing saint, just a woman who had finally learned her own worth, and who wasn't afraid to make others learn it too.